Hello. I wanted to read another book from the Naughty Little Sister storybook. Another story. This one is called My Little Sister is a Curly Girl. Do you see these curls? Sometimes they call those ringlets. Juliana has ringlets in her hair, a certain kind of curly hair. All right, so it starts off. Winnie, the little girl, used to come and see us sometimes when I was a little girl, was a very quiet, tidy child. She never rushed about or shouted or played in the dirt, and she always wore neat, clean dresses. Winnie had some of those long, round curls like chimney pots that hung down around her head in a very tidy way. And when Winnie moved her head, these little curls jumped up and down, and Mother told us that these curls were called ringlets. One day when Winnie and her mother were spending the afternoon at our house, my sister sat staring very hard at Winnie's ringlets, and all of a sudden she got up and went over to her and pushed one of her little fingers inside of one of Winnie's tidy ringlets. And then, because the ringlet looked so nice on her finger, she pushed another finger into another ringlet. Doesn't look like Winnie likes that very much. Maybe you don't like people playing with your hair. Now, if someone had interfered with my sister's hair, she would have screamed and screamed. She even made a fuss when Mother brushed it, but Winnie sat still and quiet. Although I don't think she liked having her hair meddled with any more than my sister would have done. And Winnie's mother certainly didn't like it, and she said in a polite voice, but firm, "Please don't fiddle with Winnie's hair. The curls may come out." And then Winnie's mother said to our mother, "They take ages to put in every night." Oh goodness, they're curling her hair every night. When Winnie's mother said this, my funny sister thought that the curls would come right out of Winnie's head if she touched them too much. And she thought that because Winnie's mother would have to pick all the curls up and put them back into Winnie's head. So she stopped touching Winnie's hair at once and went and sat down again. She didn't think she would like to be Winnie with falling out curls. They didn't fall out of her hair. The curls would straighten. That's what they call falling out. And my little sister sat looking at Winnie, though, in case a curl should fall out on its own. But when it didn't, she got tired of looking at her and went into the garden instead to talk over the fence to dear Mrs. Coco Jones. "Mrs. Coco," she said, "Winnie has funny curls." Mrs. Coco was surprised when my sister said this, so she told her what Winnie's mother had said about the curls coming out. Now, Mrs. Coco was a kind, polite lady, and she didn't laugh at my little sister for making such a funny mistake. She just told her all about how Winnie's mother made Winnie's curls for her. Mrs. Coco told my sister how, when she was a little girl, her kind old grandmother had curled her hair. She said that her mother had made her hair damp with a wet brush and twisted her hair up in little bits of rag, and how she'd gone to bed with her hair twisted up like that, and how in the next morning her grandmother had undone her curlers, and she had had ringlets, just like Winnie. And my sister was very interested. "Of course," said Mrs. Coco, "my granny only did my hair up on Saturday night so that it would be curly on Sunday. On ordinary weeknights, I just had two little pigtails just like you." And when my sister heard Mrs. Coco saying about how her grandmother curled her hair for her, she began to smile. "I know, Mrs. Coco," she said. "You can make me a curly girl." And Mrs. Coco said that my sister should have to sit very still and not squirm about, and my sister said she would be very still indeed, and so Mrs. Coco said, "Well then, if your mother is willing, I will pop in tonight and put in some curlers for you." And after that, my sister went into the house and sat very quietly looking at Winnie and Winnie's beautiful ringlets and smiling like a pussycat. She didn't say anything to Winnie and her mother about what kind Mrs. Coco was going to do. But when they had gone, she told Mother and me all about it, and Mother said that it was very kind of Mrs. Coco to offer to make ringlets in my sister's hair, and she said, Mrs. Coco can try anyway, though I can't think how you would sit still long enough. So there's Mrs. Coco tying little bits of rag into the little sister's hair to make the ringlets. But my sister said, I want ringlets just like Winnie, and she said it in a very loud voice to show that she wouldn't fuss. So my mother didn't say anything else, and when Mrs. Coco came over at my sister's bedtime with a lot of strips of pink rag and asked for my sister's hairbrush and a basin of water, our mother fetched them for her without saying a word about how my sister usually fussed. Now, my sister had said that she was not going to be a naughty girl when Mrs. Coco curled her hair, and she knew that Mother expected her to be naughty, so although she found that she did not like having her hair twisted up in little bits of rag very much, she sat very still. My sister did not like having her hair twisted up into those rags one bit, for her hair was rather long, and Mrs. Coco had to twist and twist very tightly indeed to make sure that the curlers would stay in, and the tighter the curl rags were tied, the more uncomfortable they felt. But my sister did not say anything. She sat good and quiet, and she thought about all the lovely Winnie ringlets. And when Mrs. Coco had finished, she thanked her very nicely and went upstairs with Rosie Primrose, her doll, with her hair all curled up tight with little pink rags sticking up all over her head. But, oh dear. So here's a picture of the pink rags all over her head. So now we're going to find out what the oh dear part is. Oh dear, have you ever tried to sleep with curlers in your hair? I have not. My sister tried and tried, but whenever she turned her head, there was a knob of hair to lie on, and it was so uncomfortable. She tried to go to sleep with her nose in the pillow, but that was very unpleasant. So she's going to sleep just like this. In the end, the poor child went to sleep with her head right hanging over the edge of the bed and her arm around the bedpost so that she didn't fall out. And that wasn't comfortable either. So she woke up. And when my little sister woke up, she shouted because she could not remember why she was lying in such a funny way, and Mother had to come into her. And when Mother saw how hard it was for my little sister to sleep with the curlers in, she said perhaps they had better come out, and that made my naughty little sister cry because she did want Winnie ringlets, until Mother said, well, if you want curls, don't fuss, and she went back to her own bed. And after that, my poor little sister slept and woke up and slept and woke up all night. But she didn't shout any more, and when morning came, she was sleepy and cross and peepee-eyed. I'd never heard that before, peepee-eyed. My mother would say fractious. Fractious is when you feel fussy because you didn't get enough sleep. But when she had had her breakfast, Mrs. Coco came in to undo the curlers, and my sister cheered up again and began to smile. And she sat very still while kind Mrs. Coco took out the rags and carefully combed each ringlet into shape, and when Mrs. Coco had finished and my sister climbed up to see in the mirror, she smiled like anything. And I smiled, and Mother smiled. She was a curly girl, curlier even than Winnie, because she had a lot more hair than Winnie had, and she had real ringlets that you could slide your finger into. And my sister was a proud girl that day, and she sat about very still all day, just like Winnie, and after dinner she fell asleep in her chair. She was so tired. When my sister woke up, she sat for a little while and did a lot of thinking, and then she got down from her chair and went around to see Mrs. Coco. "Thank you very much, Mrs. Coco, for making me a curly girl," my sister said. "I don't think I will be a curly girl any more. It makes me too sleepy to be curly." "I know why Winnie is so quiet now," my sister said, "because she cannot sleep in her curlers. I think I would rather be me, asleep with pigtails." And Mrs. Coco said, "That is a very good idea, I think. Anyway, who would want you to look like Winnie when you can look like you?" So there's not a picture of her with her curly curls. I like those stories. I think they're very funny. All right. There's a picture of the little sister and her friend Harry. And I hope you're doing well. I miss you. I'll see you next time.